You arrive at the gates long before dawn, when the air is cold enough to bite through your thin clothes and the mist curls like ghostly fingers across the stones. The cart that carried you rattles to a halt, its wooden wheels creaking, and for the first time you see the palace walls rising above you. They are impossibly tall, painted a deep crimson that seems to drink in the torchlight, and topped with curling golden tiles that gleam faintly in the moonlight. You know, with a certainty that makes your stomach churn, that once you pass through those gates, the life you once knew, the boy who ran barefoot across fields, who smelled of grass and river water, who laughed with freedom, will never exist again. The eunuch beside you clears his throat. His face is expressionless, as though carved from wax, but his eyes are sharp and appraising. When the gates open, he says, his voice flat and practiced, you will not look up. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will bow until your forehead touches the floor. You belong to the palace now. You are not a man. You are not a child. You are property. The words sink into you like ice water. Property. You want to ask if there is still a chance to leave, if perhaps this has all been a terrible mistake. But the question never leaves your lips. You know that once chosen, no one returns. The gates creak open with a groan that echoes like thunder. Beyond them, torchlight flickers on lacquered beams and marble floors, casting long shadows that twist, like spectres. You are pushed forward, stumbling into a courtyard so vast that your eyes cannot find its end. The air smells of sandalwood and old stone, a fragrance both soothing and suffocating. You hear footsteps behind you, the shuffle of other boys, the nervous coughs, the shallow breaths. You are not alone, but you feel as though you are. Each of you is swallowed by the immensity of the palace, your individuality already dissolving into nothingness. A line of eunuchs awaits, their heads shaved smooth, their robes of pale silk swaying with practiced precision. Their gazes move over you like measuring rods, not seeking humanity, but usefulness. One gestures, and you are herded forward into a hall where the roof arches so high it disappears into shadow. Painted dragons coil along the beams, their mouths open in silent roars, and you feel as though they are watching you, judging you. You are told to kneel. The stone floor is cold beneath your knees, and the sound of dozens of bodies dropping in unison reverberates like a single heartbeat. Silence stretches. Then, the chief eunuch steps forward. His robe is embroidered with cranes, his eyes dark, pools of authority. He surveys you with detached amusement, as though he has seen countless boys like you pass through these gates and vanish into obscurity. From this moment, he announces, his voice carrying through the vast hall, you have no family name, you have no village, you have no past. The Son of Heaven will decide if you are worthy of the slightest glance. Until then, you are less than the dust beneath his feet. Remember this, and you may survive. The words cut into you more deeply than any whip could. No name, no past. You feel something inside you unravel, as though the tether to your old self has been severed forever. Hours blur together after that. You are stripped of your clothes, your belongings, even the string of beads your mother once tied around your wrist for luck. They fall into a basket like discarded trash. In their place, you are given a robe of plain cloth, the same as every other boy. Its color is dull, its fabric rough, and yet as you slip it on, you feel its weight like a shackle. The palace is a labyrinth, and you are led deeper inside, past courtyards filled with rock gardens, through corridors where lanterns flicker, past guards in armor who do not so much as glance at you. At every turn, you feel the walls closing in tighter. The sky, once wide and open above your village, is here reduced to slivers of grey between roofs. You catch glimpses of painted screens, the faint shimmer of gold, the rustle of silk robes disappearing into distant chambers. Each sight reminds you that you are entering a world not built for you, but one that will consume you. At last, You are brought to a chamber where the eunuchs order you to sit. A basin of water is placed before you. You look into its surface, but the boy staring back seems like a stranger. His eyes are wide, his lips trembling, his face pale in the lantern light. You touch your cheek, half expecting it to feel unfamiliar. Then comes the shaving. A blade scrapes across your scalp, removing every strand of hair. You feel the chill of air against your bare skin, the vulnerability of being laid bare, stripped of even the small pride of your appearance. One of the eunuchs smears oil across your head, the smell pungent and unfamiliar. When it is done, you look once more into the basin. The boy you knew is gone. In his place is a hollow reflection, shorn, nameless property. Night falls, though you do not know when, for the palace is timeless. You are herded into a dormitory where mats are laid in neat rows. The other boys curl into themselves, some sobbing quietly, others staring at the ceiling with blank eyes. You lie down, your body aching, your mind racing. Above you, the beams are painted with phoenixes and lotuses, but they seem distant, mocking. As you drift into uneasy half-sleep, you hear a voice whisper from the next mat. Don't try to remember who you were. It hurts too much. You turn, your head, but the boy has already rolled away, his back facing you. The words linger like smoke, heavy and suffocating. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you see your mother's face, the fields stretching out beneath the morning sun, the river glittering as it always did. You hear the laughter of your younger siblings, the barking of your dog, the world you left behind. But when you reach for it, it slips away, dissolving into darkness. The palace has swallowed you whole, and as sleep finally drags you down, you realize with a sinking heart, tomorrow you will wake not as yourself, but as something less, a shadow in silk, waiting for the gaze of a master who may never remember your name. The first light of dawn filters through the lattice windows, thin beams cutting across the dormitory like prison bars. You wake not because you want to, but because the eunuch's bamboo rod slams against the floor with a crack that makes every boy jolt upright. Sleep clings to your eyes, your body aches from the hard mat, but hesitation earns punishment. You scramble to your feet, head bowed, robe clutched around your thin frame, trying not to draw attention. The eunuch's voice is sharp and merciless. Line up. Silence. From this moment, you learn how to exist within the walls of the sun of heaven. You will obey, or you will vanish. You shuffle into place with the others, your bare feet cold against the stone floor. The hall is silent, except for the sound of breath and the faint rustle of robes. The weight of expectation presses down like an invisible hand. You realize quickly, this is no school. This is a forge, and you are to be hammered into shape until nothing remains of the boy you once were. The first lesson is posture. Your body is not yours, the eunuch barks. It belongs to the emperor. Even the way you stand reflects upon him. You will not slouch. You will not sway. You will be as rigid as the pillars of this hall. He demonstrates, his back straight, his eyes lowered in perfect submission. You mimic him, but your legs tremble, your shoulders ache. The bamboo rod slaps your back, sharp and stinging. Straighter, always straighter. You are not a farmer in a field. You are a shadow in silk. Hours pass in this torment. The boys swaying like reeds in the wind, rods striking again and again until tears stream down cheeks, until bodies collapse, only to be forced upright again. You taste blood where you bit your lip to stifle a cry. You learn quickly that sound is dangerous, weakness unforgivable. The second lesson is silence. They teach you how to move without noise, how to breathe shallowly so your presence is barely felt. If you can be heard, the eunuch says, you are already a failure. The emperor must never notice you unless he chooses to. You are forced to walk across the polished tiles while bowls of water balance on your head. Every stumble, every drop spilled, earns a lash of the rod. Your neck stiffens, your steps grow careful, each movement deliberate. You begin to understand. Survival here means invisibility. At mealtimes, you are given thin porridge, barely enough, to quiet your stomach. The bowls are set before you in perfect rows, and you must kneel, waiting until the eunuch gives the signal. Hands folded, eyes lowered, you are not allowed to eat until commanded. The hunger gnaws, but the lesson is clear. Even the act of lifting food to your mouth is not your own choice. The third lesson is service. You are taught how to bow, how to fold the emperor's robes, how to pour wine into jade cups without spilling a single drop. Every gesture is rehearsed until your arms ache and your fingers blister. If the silk brushes the floor, you are struck. If the cup rattles against the tray, you are struck. If your bow is a fraction too shallow, you are struck. You start to notice the older boys, the ones who have survived long enough to become skilled. Their movements are flawless, like dancers repeating a well-practiced routine. Their eyes are empty, their faces expressionless. They glide silently across the hall, each gesture perfectly measured. You realize that they are no longer boys. They are shadows made flesh, hollowed out until nothing remains but obedience. At night, when the training ends, you collapse onto your mat, your body bruised and trembling. The other boys lie motionless, their eyes open, staring into the dark. You want to whisper, to ask if anyone else remembers home, but fear seals your lips. The silence of the dormitory is heavier than chains. Days blur into weeks. Pain becomes routine. Hunger becomes expected. Fear becomes the rhythm of your existence. You learn to anticipate the eunuch's rod, to adjust your bow before it falls, to move just so when pouring wine so the jade cup does not tremble. Slowly, almost without realizing it, your body molds itself into their design. One evening, after endless drills, the chief eunuch inspects you. His eyes sweep over your posture, your silence, your obedience. For the first time, he nods. Better, he murmurs. The word is not praise. It is a reminder that you have finally begun to erase yourself. But inside, a war rages. Some nights you dream of your village, of your mother's voice calling you to supper, of the cool river water against your skin. You wake with tears on your cheeks, your heart aching with a longing so fierce it feels like pain. Other nights you dream of the palace, of endless corridors where you run but never escape, of painted dragons that whisper your name as if mocking your fate. You wake trembling, unable to remember who you are outside these walls. The days continue, merciless, unchanging. You lose track of time. The seasons shift, but the training never ends. You notice your reflection in the basin one morning. Your posture is straighter now, your eyes lowered, your face already losing the softness of boyhood. You no longer recognize the child who entered the palace. You see only the beginnings of a shadow, shaped and polished for service. And yet, despite the pain, despite the erasure, a small ember burns inside you. A voice that whispers in the silence, I am still here. You do not dare speak it aloud, but in the quiet moments, as you kneel with the other boys or lie awake on your mat, you cling to it. It is the last piece of yourself, fragile as glass, but it is all you have. The eunuchs teach you that survival depends on obedience, but you begin to understand that true survival, the kind that preserves even the faintest spark of who you once were, depends on remembering that ember. You hide it deep within, shield it from their eyes, nurture it in secret. Because one day, you realize, the palace may demand everything from you, your voice, your body, your name. And if you let go of that last ember, there will be nothing left at all. Night descends on the inner court like a velvet shroud, slow, deliberate, heavy with meanings you are only beginning to understand. Lanterns bloom along the covered walkways, amber islands in a sea of shadow, each flame haloed by oiled paper, each pool of light a stage where mistakes become punishable truths. You've just finished polishing a lacquer tray when the bell sounds. A single measured note from a bronze tongue that has ended more childhoods than swords ever could. The chief eunuch appears in the doorway as if conjured by that note. His silhouette is knife straight, his voice cool enough to frost porcelain. You, he says, not your name, because names soften, and points with the end of his bamboo rod. Your stomach drops so fast you feel the floor is missing. Around you, the other boys look down in synchronized mercy, pretending not to exist, because that is the only gift you can give the chosen, the courtesy of not witnessing their fear. You kneel, accept the scroll token he presents, and rise with the tray you've prepared 100 times in drills, but never for this. Silk rustles like distant grass. Somewhere in the dark, a water clock exhales a single bead of time. The route the eunuch leads you through is a geometry of obedience. Turn at the cinnabar door with the carved bats. Cross the stone bridge where the koi flick moonlight with their tails. Pass under the painted beam of cranes forever flying toward a sun that never moves. The air smells of sandalwood and old secrets. With every step, the palace sheds its daytime bustle and transforms into something ceremonial, colder, more exacting. The lantern light reaches only so far. Beyond it, corridors stretch like unanswered questions. You reach a small antechamber. 2 older attendants receive you in silence. They wash your hands with water that smokes in the cold night and rub your wrists with powdered clove, so your presence will be memory rather than scent. A robe of river grey silk replaces your dormitory cotton. A jade clasp tames your hair. The finishing touch is not for beauty, but for order. A narrow white sash tied so precisely its knot sits like a punctuation mark against your ribs. The chief eunuch studies you as if you were a tool he intends to lend the emperor and fears never getting back. His gaze corrects invisible faults. He adjusts your sleeve by the breadth of a grain of rice. Remember, he says, voice a blade wrapped in brocade. You are a reflection, not a person. What you carry like air. What you see, you did not see. What you feel, you do not feel. The doors glide open. The receiving hall is quiet as snowfall. Lamps breathe low light over gold thread murals. Mountains glazed with dawn. Rivers forever traveling to the same ocean. A screen of painted peonies stands half open, and beyond it you glimpse a chamber where shadows move with deliberation. Musicians sit like statues, instruments cradled but silent, as if sound itself were awaiting permission. You cross the floor on the path your teachers carved into your muscles. Soft heel, softer toe, tray a level horizon. You kneel, lower your eyes to the appointed distance, and recite the line you have rehearsed until it replaced your breath. Your voice is steady. The tray glides forward, cups aligned with a calligrapher's cruelty. Nothing spills, nothing trembles. The world could end outside the palace walls, and you would still hold the line of the cup to the lip of the table. There is a pause, a soft word you're not meant to hear, and then the screen parts a hand's width. A figure emerges not as a person, but as precedence. Robes the color of stormlight, a girdle clasped with hammered dragons, silence that weighs more than bronze. You keep your gaze lowered. You count your heartbeats because that is safer than counting the ways life can change in an instant. The first summons is never about tea. It is about the ceremony of nearness, the choreography of being present without being alive. You are asked to refill a cup that is not empty, to refold a sleeve that needs no folding, to stand at a distance measured not in steps, but in expectations. Questions arrive like arrows wrapped in silk. How long have you served? As long as the court has permitted, you answer, because you were taught that time belongs to the throne. Who taught your hands to be so still? Discipline, you say, and the word tastes like old iron. A murmur from the screen, a different voice this time, softer, amused, dangerous in the way a quiet lake hides a deep drop. You do not react. Your stillness is a rope bridge over a gorge. One misplaced breath and you feel yourself sway. A gesture you barely catch in the corner of your vision, and the musicians summon a thread of sound, a single note from the kin, like a hairline crack running through ice. The air grows perfumed. The lamps seem to lean closer. You are told to step forward, to remove the tray, to wait. You obey, because obedience is the only language you now speak without an accent. The conversation in the screened alcove turns to the weather over distant borders, then to grain levies, then to the quality of last year's horse herds. The topics brush against you like moth wings, soft, persistent, trusting you to be nothing more than furniture with a pulse. But every few lines a question hooks you. Where you grew up, whether you can read poetry, if your voice can hold a tune. No answer is safe. Every answer is wrong. You choose the smallest version of truth, the quietest shape of yourself, because your instructors taught you that survival is the art of subtraction. A hand breaks the screen's edge and beckons. You step to the threshold. Everything you have drilled narrows to the width of the doorframe. Bow, hold, breathe, do not exist. You become an outline carved from compliance. What happens next is not spectacle. It is assessment. The proximity is deliberate, the silence measured, the gaze slow and technical in the way a master appraises a tool. Weight, balance, resilience under strain. No one touches you. They don't need to. The room touches you. The hierarchy does. The certainty that your body is a document to be annotated by power. You keep your eyes where the protocol says. You answer when spoken to. You endure the inventory of your presence without flinching, because flinching writes a story in the air you cannot erase. When the screen closes, it is like a wave withdrawing. The bell sounds again, one soft stroke. The musicians vanish their notes. An attendant's cough is the only permission you need to breathe fully for the first time in an hour. You reverse your steps perfectly, as if rewinding a scroll. Retreat, 3 paces, bow, turn, carry the emptied tray that weighs as much as a verdict. Outside, the night is the same night. The koi still comb moonlight with their fins. The cranes on the beam still chase a sun that never moves. But the angle of the world has tipped, and everything inside you is sliding toward an edge you cannot name. In the antechamber, the chief eunuch waits. He inspects you the way a general inspects a soldier returned from the front. First for wounds, then for stories. He finds neither. Good, he says, which in this place is not praise, but a placement on a board you cannot see. You will sleep now. Tomorrow you will be given new duties. You bow. You do not ask what new means. Questions are small rebellions that leave large scars. Back in the dormitory, the boys lie on their mats with their backs turned, the ritual invisibility of comrades who won't ask and won't tell. You fold your robe with hands that do not feel like yours and sit for a long time before you trust your legs to lie down. When you finally do, the mat seems higher, as if you are sleeping on a platform built from the night's events. Sleep comes, like weather over a plain, slow, then all at once. You dream in corridors, doors open and close without hinges. A tray floats above your hands. The bell's tone becomes a line of ink drawn across the sky. At its far end, a figure turns toward you but has no face, only a mirror where features should be. You wake before you see yourself reflected. Morning arrives with its usual cruelty. The rod on stone, the posture drills, the silence practiced, until your throat learns not to want. But something in your body has been recalibrated. The cup you lift is lighter than before, your bow narrower, your breath thinner. The instructors notice. The chief eunuch pauses beside you longer than usual, as if listening for a new sound in your silence. He says nothing. He never says anything he can command with a look, but the next roster posted on the pillar bears your mark in cinnabar, beside a column labeled with a single character that redefines you, inner. The circle closes tighter. Duties change. You spend afternoons in rooms that smell of camphor and plum wine, where silk behaves like water, and voices rarely have to raise themselves. You learn the topography of the palace by the temperature of its floors. Cool stone where decisions harden, warm wood where tempers soften, carpeted thresholds where lives pivot. You memorize faces the way you were taught to memorize poems. Cadence, emphasis, where to pause. You practice the invisible labor of anticipating thirst, drafts, shadows, and the fatigue of men who carry too many names inside one body. Sometimes there are words meant for your ears, a compliment disguised as correction, a question stretched like a bridge across protocol, a laugh that invites and warns in the same breath. More often, there are not. Your work is to be nearby without being present, necessary without being notable, intimate with a room's life without belonging to it. You become a vessel for the palace's temperature, a barometer of approaching storms. You feel when a mood lowers like a cloud bank. You sense when lightning is about to choose a tree. On the 7th night after your first summons, you are sent with a sealed lacquer box to an upstairs pavilion where the eaves wear bells that ring even when there is no wind. The corridors here are narrower, the paint newer, the carpets deeper. An attendant meets you at the threshold and relieves you of the box with hands gloved in ceremony. "Wait," he says, and the word falls on the ground between you like a coin neither of you will admit to seeing. You wait. You count your breaths to stay in the present. 100, 200. Your knees ache. At 300, the door slides open a hand's width. A woman's voice, not unkind, calls from within. He is not to be disturbed further. Then, almost as an afterthought that changes the architecture of the world, send in the quiet one. There are many quiet ones in this palace. Tonight the word means you. You step inside. The room is a diagram of grace, low table set with a go-board, stones mid-game like stars trapped in a scholar's net, incense smoke writing its cursive in the dim, a screen painted with cranes that look as if they would move if no one watched. You kneel where you are told. You hold your breath without being asked. You become that narrow thing you have practiced, becoming since the first dawn, a presence shaped like usefulness. What happens in this room will not be written, not because it is unspeakable, but because it is ordinary here, the way snow is ordinary in winter and still remakes the earth. Proximity will be measured like rice, carefully, precisely, with an abacus of glances and silences. You will pour, you will fold, you will stand close enough to feel another person's heartbeat disturb the air, but not your face. The grammar of this place is made of verbs that never reach the page. When you are dismissed, it is with a nod that is both end and beginning. You bow. You reverse your steps. Outside, the eve bells ring though the air is still. On your way back through the covered walkways, the night tastes of iron and osmanthus. Somewhere, far beyond these walls, a dog barks twice and is answered by no one. You realize your hands are steady. You realize your mouth is dry. You realize that in a world built of thresholds, you have just crossed one, and there will be others, each bearing less of you across. In the dormitory, a boy has left a sweet bean cake on your folded mat, a currency of kindness in a place where kindness has no official rate. You eat half and place the other half back where you found it. It is a ritual the boys invented to say, "I see you," without saying anything at all. You lie down. The ceiling is a map you cannot read. The bell will sound again tomorrow, and you will rise. And the door will open or it won't. You will be summoned, or you won't. Either way, you have learned the truth that no one writes on. The pillars, the first summons never ends. It echoes. It changes the pitch of your silence, the length of your shadow, the weight of your name. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the layers of training and robe and role, the ember you protected through the drills and the rods and the hunger glows, a fraction dimmer and a fraction steadier at the same time. Smaller, because the room has less air. Steadier, because you have learned how to cup your hands around it in the dark. You sleep. The palace does not. The order arrives at dusk, ink still wet on the bamboo slip when it reaches your hands. The courier bows, says nothing, and vanishes into the lattice of corridors as if swallowed by the palace itself. You unroll the message. In the slanting light, attend the lantern rite in the western garden. Render service as directed. Speak only when addressed. There is no seal, only a brushstroke like a blade. You understand, this is not an invitation. It is a test. By the time you step onto the stone path that rims the lotus ponds, night has fallen soft as ash. Hundreds of paper lanterns float on the water, each one a trembling moon caught in the reeds. Their light flickers against lacquered bridges and the pale trunks of willows, painting the garden in a living calligraphy of gold and black. Music drifts from the pavilion, kin notes that fall like water, flute breath thin as a thread. Incense rises in blue ribbons. The air tastes of osmanthus and the promise of rain. You are dressed in winter silk that clings to your wrists. A sash binds your waist with a knot you can untie with 2 fingers, should you need to. You hope you won't. The slippers bite your heels. You do not flinch. Survival is a choreography, and pain is only another step. The guests assemble in clusters like constellations, ministers with faces carved from caution, generals whose hands never forget the weight of a sword, literati draped in perfumed melancholy. Between them move women whose hairpins carry whole gardens in filigree, and eunuchs whose serenity is a weapon honed on other people's fear. Laughter skims the water like a dragonfly and dies quickly. No one wishes to disturb the surface. You are led to the pavilion's shadowed edge, where a low table holds a shallow bronze basin floating with lanterns shaped like lotuses, carp, and tigers. A senior attendant murmurs, "When His Majesty signals, you will set a lantern to drift and recite the verse you were given." Clear voice, steady hands. He does not look at you. The instruction is not for you, but for the role you are wearing. A cross. The pond, under a canopy of wisteria trained even in winter to pretend at bloom with silk blossoms, the emperor sits. He wears night like an ally. Behind him, the Empress Dowager is a dark mountain of silk and authority. To her left, a prince whose smile is all angles. To her right, a minister whose scalp shines like an omen. The emperor's face is young and unreadable, the kind of youth that devours the world to stay unlined. His gaze moves like the wind, everywhere and nowhere. And then, abruptly, it stops. On you. A gesture. The music stills as if someone has cinched the garden's throat. You step forward, lift the lantern the color of an apricot's heart, and lower it to the basin. The pond catches its light and multiplies it, breaking your reflection into a handful of strangers. You recite the verse, 4 lines, 7 characters, each about clear streams and upright pines. The usual moral scaffolding draped over an evening meant for anything but virtue. Your voice stays obedient to the pitch taught in the dormitories, yet somewhere under the measure, a pulse of your old village sneaks through. The cadence of river stones, the hush after oxen turn the furrow, and the earth exhales. When you finish, the emperor's eyelids lower, the faintest nod, and conversation resumes. The world starts breathing again. You withdraw to the pavilion's flank, your body a column of stillness among moving silks. The senior attendant's sleeve brushes your wrist. Approval or warning, it's impossible to tell. The next performer steps forward, a girl from the outer quarters with wrists like willow branches. She unspools a ribbon dance that writes characters. In the air you cannot read, the court sighs appropriately. That is when you see him. The boy from the kitchens. The one who traded you an extra slice of persimmon last winter for 2 lines of a poem he could recite to his secret. He has no right to be here among the lacquered laughter. He carries a tray of cups and walks with a care that is almost prayer. He looks up once, and the brief flare of recognition in his eyes is a candle held too near silk. You look away because you have learned what happens to candles. A rustle in the garden's shadow, a ripple of movement that is not wind. You let your eyes drift the way a servant's eyes must, attentive to everything, answerable for nothing. 3 men stand under the eaves of a lesser pavilion painted with cranes. The angular prince, the shining scalped minister, and a third, figure cloaked in a court robe of plain black. The kind that says, "I have no ornaments because I am the ornament." Their hands move like they are counting ghosts. The black-robed man tilts his head toward where the emperor sits. The prince smiles without teeth. You are not supposed to see this. You see it anyway, because all your life has trained you to notice. The angle of a cup, the 2-beat hesitation in a footstep, the thin line of water where a boat was recently pulled from shore. You do not know the words for politics. You know tides. A eunuch glides to your side, a shadow inside a shadow. The Empress Dowager wishes to hear the southern tale about the fisherman who found a mirror. He says softly, "It is not a request." You bow and follow, barefoot now, the slippers removed to make you safer on the slick stones, or to make you quieter. Perhaps both. The Empress Dowager's sleeve is a poem about cranes stitched in silver thread. She does not look at you as you kneel. "Begin," she says, and the single syllable bristles with winters. You tell the tale. A fisherman finds a mirror and thinks it a portal where his drowned father waits. He tries to climb through and cracks the glass, cutting his hands. Yet he keeps trying, convinced that devotion can teach water to become a door. Your voice is the voice of wind slipping under a door. Somewhere between the second and third paragraph, a sparrow lands on the pavilion's railing and listens. The Empress Dowager's gaze sharpens. When the fisherman finally learns he has been looking at his own face all along, you let the ending fall soft. No moral, no flourish, just the ache of a man who recognizes himself and does not know what to do with the knowledge. "Enough," she says, and the word is both verdict and blessing. A nod to a waiting eunuch, tea for the storyteller, a courtesy like a leash made of silk. You drink carefully. The cup smells of chrysanthemum and something bitter that tastes like stamina. When you set it down, your fingers tremble once, as if they are remembering an old winter. You tuck the tremor into your sleeve. No one sees, except someone does. The black-robed man has appeared at the edge of the pavilion like a proof. Up close, his robe is woven so fine the fabric eats light. His face is ordinary, in the way of men who have discarded everything that could be used against them. He bows to the Empress Dowager, then lets his gaze wash over you as if measuring grain. "This one," he says, recites as if he is listening to a door. His tone is neutral, his words are a trap, with its teeth buried in moss. You look at his feet, the acceptable degree of deference. He steps closer, enough that you feel the cool shadow of him across your cheek. "There is a task," he says softly, "and you understand it is for you," even before the Empress Dowager inclines her head. A note must be carried to the pavilion. Of sundials, it will pass through hands that do not exist and arrive at a room that has never opened. You will carry the air between. You hear your own voice as if from underwater. "Yes." He smiles, pleased or amused, then disappears without moving. The trick of men who own corridors rather than bodies. The Empress Dowager lifts her cup. "Go," she says, and that single breath turns the garden's gentle lanterns into a map of obligations. A junior eunuch guides you off the path and into the latticework of servants' ways. Narrow corridors that smell of boiled rice and wood smoke. Stairwells whose steps remember every foot that has climbed them in the last 100 years. He presses a folded paper into your palm. It is thin as a cicada's wing. "If you are stopped," he says, "you are delivering fresh hand towels." You pass through a storeroom where hanging ducks turn slowly in the draft, their lacquered skin gleaming like small sunsets. Past a screen where 2 maids whisper about a hairpin lost and a debt found. Through a courtyard where rain has begun to stipple the lantern-lit pond, each drop opening a brief eye on the surface before sinking. Your feet find the memory of every stone. You carry the paper as if it is a small bird that must not be startled. At the pavilion of sundials, the stone faces of time lie like beached moons in the grass. Each dial is a sentence in a language mastered only by noon. The room you were told has never opened stands at the pavilion's back, its wooden door unpainted, its lintel uncarved, conspicuous in its refusal to be conspicuous. You knock once with the back of your knuckles, because that is how servants say, "I am here, but not here." The door opens just enough to make a blade of dark. A hand emerges, old, and sure, its veins a relief map. You place the paper on the palm. The hand vanishes. The door closes. No breath, no question, no proof that you were anything but a misremembered draft in a corridor. You turn to leave and find the black-robed man standing between you and the rain. He has arrived the way bad weather does, without footprints. You carried it well, he says. Did you read it? You keep your eyes on his collar, where one thread has worked itself loose, a flaw that is either accident or bait. I cannot read, you say, and the lie sits in your mouth like a stone you have practiced swallowing. You can, he says, not as accusation but as weather. But you chose to remain empty. Good. Emptiness holds more than pockets do. His gaze slides past you, toward the garden's bright hum. Tonight, a tide turns. Walk as if your shadow is on loan. You bow and leave him with the sundials, where time will have to work harder to keep up. On the way back, the rain commits to its plan. It sews the garden together with silver thread. Lanterns struggle against the wind. Some go out, their smoke rising in thin questions. The music resumes in the main pavilion, louder now, as if meant to drown something. You slip among pillars, past courtyards where courtiers gather in huddles of silk and suspicion. In the western garden, celebration knifes toward frenzy. The emperor has decided to cast lanterns himself, a gesture calculated to be remembered. He kneels at the water's edge, releases a carp-shaped light into the pond, laughs when it bumps against a lotus. Padan rights itself. The court laughs with him, threaded on the needle of his sound. The angular prince watches with a smile a fraction too sharp. The shining scalped minister's hands are still. The kitchen boy appears again at the pond's rim, tray trembling, eyes searching for an oasis of safety that doesn't exist. You know then, without knowing why, that the black-robed man's tide has risen to the lip. You set your face to stillness. You must be a bowl that can reflect without spilling. A cry, muffled and quickly strangled from beyond the pine screen. A eunuch moves faster than a thought, his sleeve a curtained blade. The musicians look away and play louder. This is an old palace trick, covering fractures with sound. The Empress Dowager's fan closes once, a thunderclap made of silk. The emperor turns his head a little, and in that small degree of motion lies everything. Displeasure, calculation. A promise made to himself years ago that mercy will not be the first tool he reaches for. Lightning walks along the pond and sits, down somewhere behind the pavilions. Thunder follows late, drunk and apologetic. The guests shiver and call it a breeze. The black-robed man emerges from nowhere to whisper something into the Empress Dowager's sleeve. Her face does not move. She inclines her head so slightly that only floors notice. The rain thickens and becomes a curtain. The senior attendant is at your side again. You will escort a guest to the inner corridor, he says. His tone is the same one he uses to instruct you to sweep ashes, boil water, smile, now. The guest is not a lord or lady, not anyone the lanterns were lit for. It is the kitchen boy, white as rice, shaking so finely he looks woven from insect wings. Blood, only a thread of it, marks his sleeve, the kind of mark that is a promise of a story no one will ever be allowed to tell. You put your body between him and the court with the subtlety of weather. You tilt your umbrella to hide his face. You become a wall built of motion. Head down, you murmur, a river's instruction. You take the servant paths again, faster this time, as if music were pushing you. Behind you, the garden roars with celebration. Applause for something breathtaking and harmless. Ahead of you, the corridor narrows until the rain is only memory. The boy stumbles. Your hand finds his elbow, steady as a handrail. Almost, you say. You do not know to whom you are speaking. Him, yourself, the part of the palace that still listens. At the threshold of the laundry court, you stop and put the umbrella into his hands. Walk to the brazier, you say. Ask for dry sleeves. Say the turtle soup pot spilled. Do not apologize more than twice. You teach him the grammar of A story that will be believed because no one wants a more complicated one. He nods too hard. Will they? He swallows. Will they come? They are already busy, you say, and the truth of it lands like a small bird on the windowsill. He bows to the floor in a way that is not trained and runs, a clatter of rain, a stitch dropped and caught again. You stand in the corridor until your breath recognizes itself. When you return to the western garden, the storm has cleaned the air down to bone. Half the lanterns are out, their blackened mouths like astonished fish. The emperor has retired. The court exhales through smiles and begins to remember how legs walk. Servants erase the evening with quiet efficiency. Cups gathered, petals raked, gossip swept under doors to be burned at dawn. The black-robed man appears at your shoulder as if you had grown him there. A room was opened, he says. A crank turned. The water will run somewhere useful. You carried nothing and did enough. You say nothing. He studies your profile with the interest of a calligrapher evaluating a new brush. You will be sent for, he says. When you are, forget the path you took tonight. Forget the boy's face. Remember only the shape silence makes when it saves someone. He leaves you with the rain's last threads and the smell of blown-out wicks. You stand at the pond until the water gives your face back to you in a single piece. For the first time all night, you let your shoulders loosen. Your reflection does not smile. It does not need to. It is there. It is yours. On the way back to your quarters, you pass the pavilion of sundials. The unpainted door stands where it stood, a statement that refuses to be a sentence. You resist the urge to touch it. Doors in this place remember the temperature of hands. In your cell, you strip the wet silk and wring the sash. The braid of your hair leaves a damp curve on the woven mat like a question mark. You think of the kitchen boy, the sudden thread of blood, the Empress Dowager's fan closing like a storm in miniature. You think of the black-robed man and the way he speaks as if the future owes him interest. You lie down. Sleep comes cautiously. A cat that has learned about traps. When it finally steps onto your chest, you let it. In your dream, lanterns drift down a river that is also a corridor that is also a throat. Each one carries a word you cannot read. They float past, patient as stars. You wake before dawn to the soft clack of a bamboo tally slipping under your door. You do not need to unroll it to know what it says. You unroll it anyway. Report at sunrise. Wear quiet. You smile without showing your teeth. In a place that feasts on voices, you have found the beginning of a language built from doors, rain, and the space between two breaths. It is not victory. It is not safety. It is, for now, enough. The first snow finds you before dawn, sifting through the lattice like ground pearl, dusting the lacquered floor with a soft shine that looks almost kind. You sit up from the narrow couch and watch your breath turn white in the half-light. The brazier has gone out. In the hush, you hear the palace waking the way a river thaws. Cracks, whispers, a distant clatter of buckets and ladles, until a measured drumbeat rolls across the compound. Imperial, a runner bows in your doorway with more wind than voice, attire for the solstice banquet. He lays a folded robe in your arms, blue-black silk, weighty as a promise, hem stitched with cranes flying toward a painted moon. You trace the thread with a thumb and feel your gut tighten. The cranes fly, away, not home. By the time the sun pushes a pale coin into the sky, the inner court is a stage washed in cold light. Eunuchs sweep the snow into neat crescents beside the vermilion steps. Palace maids blow steam into their sleeves. You follow. The runner past cypresses rimmed in frost and enter the dressing hall where mirrors multiply you into a corridor of versions you barely recognize. A girl powders your neck to the color of porcelain. Another pins a jade cicada into your hair. For resilience, she says, it sleeps through stone. You smile like it belongs to you. The hall of radiant harmony booms like a drum when the first door opens. Columns rise like red forests into a painted sky. The emperor's dais glows beneath a canopy woven with suns. On the floor, ministers spread out like chessmen, rank by color, ambition by shine. You feel the glaze of their attention without looking up, the curiosity, the condescension, the hunger that is never about you and always through you. A hand lands gently at your elbow, Steward Liu. His lids are heavy, but his gaze is sharp as the edge of a folded fan. "Be water," he murmurs as if asking about your health. You survive by taking the shape of what holds you. Today, the vessel is ceremony. You nod. He releases you with a pressure that could be affection or warning. You take your place among the entertainers of the inner bureau, half shadow, half ornament, the way you have been taught, present enough to be seen when summoned, absent enough to be forgotten when danger passes. Wind sifts under the eaves and rattles bronze bells like teeth. When the emperor enters, the air draws back the way the shore does before a wave. He is wrapped in yellow, the shade of noon. He looks thinner in winter. His eyes, when they find you, soften. It is not love, it is recognition, which is both safer and worse. Music. A plucked zither stitches a path for a flute to walk. Dancers move like snow picked up by wind, turning the hall into slow weather. You don't belong to the dance. You belong to the interval between songs, where the emperor can decide to ask for a story, or a poem, or the small grace of a face that calms him when the court is a hive of needles. You prepare a tale you learned as a child about a fisherman who bartered his mirror for a star. Gentle, harmless, forgettable. Exactly what the morning needs to pass without incident. Then the Prime Minister steps forward. He is a tall brushstroke in sable, bearded, precise. White frost salts his temples like wisdom he did not earn. "Your Majesty," he says, bowing with the correctness of a trap closing. Before the music continues, a matter of integrity weighs upon the court. The hall tightens. You feel it. Through the soles of your feet. A pull, like a river going elsewhere. "Speak," the emperor says, voice mild, not fooled. The minister raises a small lacquered tray. On it rests a silk handkerchief the color of dried pomegranate peel. Folded inside, something gleams. He does not uncover it yet. The granaries at Yemen report losses. Inventories do not match the Board of Revenue tallies. We are mindful of flood, vermin, human error. Yet a witness mentions seeing a seal, Your Majesty's private seal, impressed on emergency orders for grain transfers that bypassed all proper channels. He pauses, letting the words fill all the spaces where breathing usually fits. "Tonight, in the spirit of clear frost and clear governance, I submit this as evidence." The silk opens. On the tray lies a jade seal with a dragon humped around a cloud. You don't have to see the underside to know what it says. Your chest empties as if a door opened in it and let all your warmth out. You have seen that seal once, balanced. On the emperor's palm, heavy as an heirloom, while you poured his tea, you remember the feel of its shadow on your wrist. "Blasphemy!" Someone breathes from the ranks. Another asks to examine it. The minister shakes his head with practiced sorrow. Not outside His Majesty's sight. The emperor's gaze returns to you, and for a brief pulse, the hall is a single thread pulled taut between his pupils and yours. Not accusation, not even doubt. Question, clean as snow. Your throat tastes like copper. Your answer cannot be a plea. It must be a story truer than whatever they have rehearsed. "Your Majesty," you say, stepping forward and sinking to your knees until the work inlaid on the floor cools your palms. "If my voice offends the order of rank, silence me. But if I may become a reed in winter, let wind pass through me, clean." A murmur of annoyance, intrigue. The emperor tilts his head. Permission. You speak of the corridor behind the audience gate, of the evening storms that rattle the lanterns, of the Board of Revenue runner who tripped at the corner where the tile buckles and spilled a stack of orders like leaves. You recall how an older eunuch scolded him, how he gathered the slips with wet sleeves, how you, passing with the night tea, helped stack the papers, your warm hands lifting cold ink. I do not know a seal from a star, you say, and let the hall hear the smallness of your education. I know only the weight of trays, the bumps on the threshold, the smell of mildew where the roof leaks. The hall smiles in places. It is relief cloaked as condescension. Good, you think. Let them lower you into a space so small you cannot be seen as a rival to their games. The minister smiles with his lips, not his eyes. Pretty, he says, but less helpful than the river records, which show a private courier dispatched from the inner apartments on the very night the unauthorized orders moved. He lets the cruelty ripen. From your quarters, boy. A beat, then a rustle like birds lifting from a tree. Steward Lou stiffens beside you almost imperceptibly. You keep your eyes down. A courier came that night, you say. He brought ginger syrup for the emperor's cough, the physician will recall. He asked for more in the morning. You lift your chin a fraction. I am not clever enough to move grain with a cough. Laughter cracks somewhere. The emperor's mouth tightens, not anger, calculation. The physician clears his throat, steps forward, confirms the ginger. The minister bows as if relieved to be corrected. How fortunate that our memories align. Yet the courier's route was expansive. He drifted through corridors that do not lead to the pharmacy. The watch register notes his lantern near the private archives. He gestures with 2 fingers, and a soldier advances, the kind who is forgettable until you need someone to forget you. The soldier produces a small roll of silk. The guard's account, the minister says mildly. Signed, you understand now what you are inside of. Not accusation, but architecture. It has rooms, doors, sight lines arranged months ago. Someone has measured where you stand. The emperor lifts a hand, and the hall quiets like a halted storm. Minister, he asks, and his voice is as smooth as water through a reed bed. What do you want me to do with your fear? A ripple, some delight, some dread. The minister bows again, his back a perfect hinge. I desire only the safety of your majesty's realm. There are thieves in silk, as the poets warn. We must question the ones closest to your person, lest tenderness be used as a mask. A blade sheathed in good manners. Question the ones closest. It lands on the floor between you and the throne like a glove. Steward Liu steps half a pace forward. Suicidal, loyal, uncertain which. But you touch his sleeve and he stops. Your voice, when you find it again, is a bamboo flute in frost. Let me be questioned, your majesty. Let snow answer for footprints. If my hands are dirty, they will not wash clean under oath. The chamber inhales. You have offered yourself up, and in this place that reads honesty as theatre, your courage can be mistaken for a kind of plea that suits them. It is not. It's a borrowed sword. If they must cut something, let them cut where you can mend. The emperor's gaze travels the court and returns to you like a bird that briefly considered another branch. Later, he says, after we eat. The music resumes, but it is a puppet show with the strings tangled. Dishes arrive, the pale jelly of bamboo pith, duck perfumed with osmanthus, mountain mushrooms that smell like leaf mold and rain. You taste none of it. The emperor summons a joke from a poet. Laughter comes trimmed and obedient. When he lifts his cup, the prime minister mirrors the movement like a shadow. Halfway through the banquet, a page slips to your side. The Empress Dowager summons, he whispers, head low, words like snow shaken from a branch. Steward Liu's eyes flick to yours. The page's sleeve brush is a reassurance you can't afford to believe. You follow. The Empress Dowager's apartments are warmer than the world has any right to be. A tiger rug yawns under a low table. Screens of mica trap winter sun and turn it into honey. She sits in a cloud of fur, small and bright-eyed as a winter bird. "So," she says, tapping the arm of her chair with a nail painted the color of lacquered blood. "Our court has discovered the usefulness of your shadow. You kneel." She waves a hand as if swatting a dust mote. "Rise halfway. I dislike talking to the floor." When you comply, she studies you the way doctors study tongues. "You soothe him," she says without ceremony. When storms gather, in the west of his mind, you are amber poured over bees. This is both a gift and a liability. Gifts here are rented, liabilities are bought and sold. Her maid pours tea that smells like autumn burned down to its bones. "Do not defend yourself," the Empress Dowager continues. "Defense is blood in water. Instead, educate me. Why the granaries?" "Someone wants famine," you say before. "Your fear can soften it." Or the fear of it. She smiles slightly. "Good. You notice motive and not merely insult. The Prime Minister would starve a province to feed a narrative. He will blame corruption near the throne and harvest virtue. From the rubble, her eyes sharpen. Do you know why you are ideal for his story?" You swallow. "Because I am near. Because I am..." The word sticks, cheap and true. Expendable. "Because," she corrects gently, "you are loyal without portfolio. You can be punished without breaking a faction. You belong to a person, not a clan." She leans back and sighs. "We are both guilty of that indulgence. We who love the Emperor give him the most dangerous gifts, those not backed by armies. You think of the cranes sewn into your hem, flying away. What should I do?" She sets down her cup with a click that sounds like a sentence. "Eat what is set before you. Speak when spoken to. Let the snow fall. I will see what prints show at noon." She flicks her fingers, and a maid produces a small bundle. "For your throat." The hall eats voices. Inside, a wrapped pear steamed with rock sugar and ginger sweats its own weather. You bow and thank her, and for a moment, one soft step in a thicket of hard ones, you feel something like protection. It is not armor. It is the memory of it. When you return to the banquet, the sky is the blue of a blade plunged in water. Lanterns pool yellow on lacquer. The Emperor notices the sheen of heat on your face from the Empress Dowager's brazier and lifts a brow. You lower your eyes, which is an answer. The questioning takes place in a side chamber where sounds arrive softened, as if wrapped in felt. 3 officials, a scribe, an incense stick that measures the length of patience. They ask you to recount your days, your nights, your errands, your cough. You give them everything except what would humiliate the Emperor or implicate the innocent. You place details like stepping stones, lead them across a stream that looks deep and is not. The scribe's brush whispers. The incense leans and sighs itself shorter. At the end, the senior official steeples his fingers and regards you as if you were a chess move that smells like fruit. "You speak well for someone without a tutor," he says, which is a compliment that means, "Be careful of your tongue. While the matter is reviewed, we recommend prudence." "Prudence," the younger one echoes, eager to taste the word. The cold palace is prudent. The phrase falls like a shadow's shadow. You feel it in your bones. Rooms with windows that do not open. Roofs that forget their duty in rain. Corridors where names go to grow moss. The cold palace is where the court shelves what it cannot publicly condemn or safely keep. Steward Liu is waiting when you step back into the wind. He reads your face the way a sailor reads cloud. "I will send blankets," he says, already turning, already making lists in his mind. You stop him with a hand on his wrist. "A pair," you say, voice steady now, sits on the corner of the Empress Dowager's table, steaming itself smaller. His eyes flicker. He inclines his head. He understands that this is a message with an edge. We are seen. We are not alone. We are also not safe. Night lays its black silk over the palace. A bell rings somewhere, counting something that is not ours. You stand beneath the eaves of your quarter for what may be the last time and watch snow fill the prints of the day. Dancers' embroidered shoes, the scuff of a eunuch who loves gossip, the straight, cruel strokes of booted guards. Soon the world will forget the path to your door. 2 soldiers arrive without malice on their faces. One clears his throat, as if the words have thorns. By order of the Board of Ceremonies, temporary relocation to the West Compound. He does not say the other name for it. His eyes are kind when they meet yours, which is almost worse. You fold the blue-black robe with its cranes, slip it into a bamboo trunk. You touch the jade cicada in your hair and leave it there. It sleeps through stone, the girl said. You will test her wisdom. As you cross the courtyard, snow brushes your lashes like moth wings. The vermilion steps are already slick with melt and refreeze. You look back once. The hall behind you breathes firelight and music you can no longer hear. A door you do not see closes somewhere in the dark, and the sound is small and permanent. Be water, Steward Liu said. You move. You take the shape of the vessel that carries you. A corridor without end. A gate that has forgotten it opens. A night that will last as long as someone needs it to. Ahead, the West Compound waits with its empty rooms and obedient cold, a place where the court puts people to learn the sound of their own breath. You do not know yet that breath can be a weapon, a prayer, and a promise at once. You enter the West Compound the way a lamp enters a jar. Still burning, suddenly starved of air. Snow has crusted into a thin shell over the courtyard pond. A single reed pokes through like a bone. The gate thunders shut behind you and the sound rolls away into corridors that forget it ever happened. A sallow torch sputters. The guard who brought you here keeps his eyes on your bundle, not on your face, as though shame were contagious. Your room is a square of frost trimmed with spider web. The pallet smells of old straw and older rain. Someone left a cracked basin and a bamboo dipper. A hair-thin fissure runs across the clay floor like a lifeline that changed its mind. You set down your trunk, unfold the blue-black robe, and refold it again until the cranes fly perfectly along the hem. Small control in a world that measures you in handfuls of breath. At dawn, a bell stammers 3 bitter notes. You follow it to a dim refectory where bowls steam with rice thin as a rumour. A laundress with wrists like broom handles ladles you a share. Her eyes skim your face and land on the jade cicada still pinned in your hair. Not here, she mutters, but softens when you hesitate. Tuck it under the tongue of your sleeve. Things with wings make enemies. You obey. She nods, almost proud of having saved something small. Days flatten into a scroll of quiet chores. You sweep corridors that never receive guests. You fold robes that once knew music. Laundry hangs from lines like prayer flags that have forgotten their prayers. The cold palace does not hurt you. It invites the weather to do the work. Chill, damp, a draft that makes the candle stutter when you think too long about warmth. Punishment here is not spectacle, it is subtraction. Eunuchs on gate duty trade gossip like copper coins. You learn to keep your gaze on what is safe. The warp of a mat, the water ring left by a bowl, the rhythm of footsteps passing your door. When a file of women in grey slips by, former favourites who speak only with their eyes, you lower your head and listen to the hush around them. The silence is not absence, it is negotiation. On the 3rd night, Steward Liu appears as a shadow that remembers your name. Moonlight knits a pale seam along his sleeve. He does not step across your threshold. They are counting how the room holds you, he says. Do not give them a shape that can be measured. The Prime Minister, you ask? He snarls in public and feeds in private, Liu says. Granary auditors discovered falsified tallies. Enough to panic, not enough to prove. The Empress Dowager asks for time. He answers with speed. He glances at the cicada tucked inside your sleeve. Keep that. It reminds you to do the opposite of stone. You pour hot water into a clay cup and watch steam braid itself with his breath. Will the Emperor intervene? He already has, Liu says. By doing nothing obvious. Sometimes mercy must look like indifference, so it can survive the corridor. Between rooms, he tilts his head toward the courtyard. There is a way to write here without writing. The laundry keeps ledgers. There is a column no one fills. If you were to note how many buckets go missing, he lets the thought trail away like a thread across dark water. Good night. The shadow withdraws. You are left with steam, and the smallest of strategies, which is more than most receive. Next morning you ask to help in the wash-house. The laundress with broom-handle wrists looks you over like a horse. Can you lift 10 buckets? She doesn't wait for an answer. You'll learn. The wash-house is summer breathing under winter skin. Kettles thrum, ropes creak, soap roots bloom into foam. Ledger boards lie near the door, columns neat as teeth. You learn the script of the place, whose robe bleeds yellow, which sleeve hides. A charm, where steam beads on a beam at the third knothole from the left. When buckets vanish, as all buckets do in a palace where errands multiply, you mark a single dot in the empty column Liu mentioned. A dot means gone where it shouldn't. Another dot means came back with a story. You never write words. Dots travel, safer than sentences. At dusk, a page appears with a wicker tray, ginger syrup, rock sugar, a pear faintly sweating in its bowl. Your chamber tightens around the memory. He sets the tray down and flicks a glance at your sleeve. Her Majesty sends what suits a throat that was asked to carry too much, he says. His fingernails are clean, his eyes are not frightened. If you pass the west veranda after second bell, you may find a draft. He leaves before gratitude can make you foolish. Second bell. You walk the veranda and let night take the shape of your outline. The draft is a slit in the lattice, deliberate as a question. Through it, you see a sliver of the outer court, just enough to watch a courier slip from shadow to torch and back, hugging the wall where the tiles bow. He carries no lantern, only a bundle bound with dark ribbon. He disappears toward the old archives, a road a ginger courier once took by accident, or by design that pretended to be accident. You return to the wash-house ledgers and place a dot for a bucket you never carried. The laundress grunts. A good dot, she says, and does not ask why. In the cold palace, everyone understands the grammar of survival. Snow keeps falling as though the sky has an old debt to settle. Your world shrinks to rooms that remember summer and the track of a courier's feet. Twice more you watch the wall drink a shadow-heading archives ward. Twice more you give the ledger a dot, then two. On the fourth night you find the reed pond uncrusted, a clean circle of water punched through ice. Not thaw, not weather. Someone's foot. You kneel. Your breath fogs the mirror back into blindness. The jade cicada stirs against your wrist as if dreaming of bark. The Empress Dowager's maid arrives at noon with a basket of mending. Threads cut short, she observes, laying out torn sleeves. So many cuffs snagging on the same nail. Her needle kisses in and out. When cloth tears where it shouldn't, it tells you where a hand travels. Fix the cloth, and you fix the root. She never looks at you. Her thimble gleams like a moon. That night you sit by the cracked basin and rehearse a story you will tell if you are asked again to be a reed. Not about thieves. About paths. How the palace forgets its doors and remembers them all at once. How snow keeps account better than scribes. How kindness is a ledger no one admits to keeping. The summons comes before dawn, soft as a sleeve brushing, a scroll. 2 guards escort you across courtyards blue with frost into a side chamber warm with cedar. The Prime Minister stands by a brazier, smoke writing itself around his beard. The Emperor sits behind a low table, bareheaded, eyes rimmed with the fatigue of a man who has listened all night. On the table lies a seal. Your seal, his seal, the palace's question, wrapped in the same drying red silk. Tell me a story, the Emperor says. His voice is not unkind. It is winter asking a well if it remembers rain. You speak of laundry, not politics. Of dots that tally the honesty of buckets. Of a reed pond with a hole that arrives on nights when ginger is sent. Of sleeves that tear on the same nail because the same shoulder brushes the same door on the same unlawful errand. You never accuse. You place your pebbles in a line and let whoever wishes cross the stream. Silence takes a long breath. The Prime Minister's mouth tilts. Charming, he says. The boy invents poetry and calls it proof. The door slides. The Empress Dowager enters without embroidery, a ledger board in her hands. It is the laundry's, but clean of soap and full of dots. Not poetry, she says. Arithmetic. She lays it between the brazier and the seal. Your courier routes draw themselves, Minister. No ink required. She turns to the Emperor and bows. I recommend we move granary oversight to the Ministry of Works for one season and send the Board of Revenue's deputy, your protégé, to survey the river warehouses he has never seen, in winter, with thin boots. The Prime Minister's eyes go the colour of wet stone. He bows almost to the floor. As Her Majesty advises, the Emperor looks at the seal, then at you, then at the dots. The court is a garden, he says, softly. Sometimes we prune branches to save fruit. Sometimes we learn the wind. He lifts a hand. Return him to warmth. You breathe for the first time since snow began. The laundress will get new ropes. Steward Liu will sleep 1 full hour. The jade cicada will keep dreaming of bark. As the guards lead you out, the Prime Minister's sleeve whispers against yours. The intimacy of enemies who must pretend to share weather. Careful, ornament, he murmurs, low enough to be confused with courtesy. Reeds that bend too visibly invite knives that adore quiet. Outside, the courtyard receives you like lungs receiving air after a long dive. Snow has stopped. A pale sun gropes along the eaves, finds the reed pond, and coins it with light. You touch the cicada through your sleeve and feel its cool assurance. Resilience is not stone. It is sleep that knows when to wake. You turn toward home, which is only a room with a brazier and a door that opens when you push it, and realize the cold palace has taught you a more dangerous talent than endurance. It has taught you to count without numbers, to speak without words, to live where proof is a dot and mercy walks in winter shoes. The court summons arrives not with trumpets, but with a folded slip of bamboo pressed into your palm by a page whose face is younger than your shadow. His Majesty requests your presence, he says, voice level as if he were naming the weather. You are not told why, only that hesitation is not an option. By the time you reach the Hall of Heavenly Clarity, morning has torn itself open, the lacquered beams drip with golden light, and the great incense burner breathes out curls that try to erase you. The doors loom tall, carved with dragons whose eyes glitter inlaid with jade, each pair watching you take one step closer. Inside, the Emperor sits alone. No courtiers, no ministers, no guards clutter the chamber. Just him, wrapped in a robe of black silk embroidered with silver cranes that look ready to leave his body and fly across the ceiling. His hands rest lightly on the dragon-etched arms of the throne. He tilts his head, studying you as if you were a new poem he hasn't decided whether to recite aloud. You have been silent in the right places, he begins, his voice soft but edged with something sharpened by years of command. That silence kept men alive who deserved the chance. It also bound your fate to theirs. You kneel, forehead nearly brushing the cold tiles. The air vibrates with his stillness. When he speaks again, it is not the Emperor who addresses you. It is a man, weary beneath the crown. Tell me, he says, why should an emperor keep concubines who see more clearly than his ministers? You dare not raise your eyes. Because, Majesty, a concubine is expected to see and not to speak. Ministers must speak, even when they do not see. Between them, the truth sometimes survives. Silence holds the room like an animal waiting to strike. Then a sound, low, unexpected. Laughter. The Emperor's shoulders shake once. Barely. You answer like a reed, bending but not breaking. He leans forward, his gaze sharpens, and you feel it pierce your skin more intimately than touch. I have watched you from afar, he continues. They think I forget who enters and leaves. My chambers. They are wrong, I notice. The way you walk, like someone carrying another man's shadow. The way your voice lowers when you speak of snow, as if winter were something personal. Tell me, do you think I am cruel? The question coils around you, impossible to escape. You are caught between truth and survival, between what the heart screams and what the lips dare release. Majesty, you begin slowly. Cruelty is when a hand strikes without reason. You, I think, always strike for a reason. Even when the reason is hidden, the emperor's eyes narrow. Then he rises. The silk robe whispers against the floor as he steps closer. Suddenly he is no longer distant, no longer a god enthroned, but a man whose breath touches your face. He cups your chin with fingers cool and deliberate, lifting your gaze to meet his. Then tell me the hidden reason, he murmurs. The chamber spins in the silence that follows. You could speak of power, of fear, of the endless need for emperors to prove they are larger than mortality. But what slips from your lips is softer, riskier, because loneliness eats even a dragon, Majesty, and cruelty feeds it. For a heartbeat, you think you have doomed yourself. His grip tightens. The air turns brittle. Then, as if breaking glass, he releases you and steps back, pacing the chamber like a tiger caged in his own authority. You see too much, he mutters. And yet, I cannot dismiss you. He turns sharply, robe swirling. Do you know why you remain in this palace when others vanish? You shake your head. Because truth, he says, however uncomfortable, is rarer than gold. And even emperors need to be reminded they are men. He stops before the incense burner, staring into the smoke. But understand this. The more you know, the more dangerous you become. To them, to me, to yourself. A reed that bends too often is mistaken for weakness. A reed that bends not enough is cut. He waves a hand. The gesture dismisses you, but also saves you. Guards appear from nowhere, escorting you out, though their eyes betray curiosity. Few are summoned alone to the emperor's presence and return breathing. As the doors close behind you, your heart pounds not from fear of death, but from the echo of his words. You were seen, you were weighed, and you were not discarded. That is survival, but also a curse. The emperor's gaze will never leave you now. Back in your quarters, the jade cicada presses against your skin, cool and sharp. For the first time, you wonder if it is a charm of protection or a marker for sacrifice. Either way, you understand what the cold palace never taught you. Silence is not safety when power itself is listening. The palace changes at night. Lanterns gutter low and corridors breathe like hollow bones. You know their rhythm now. The guard's steps, the echo of sandals, the hiss of silk dragging across tiles. Tonight something feels wrong. You sense it before you hear it. A whisper carried. Through the lattice window, a name, yours, followed by a laugh too sharp for friendship. You rise, pressing your ear to the crack in the wooden frame. Outside, two eunuchs murmur as they pass. His favor is dangerous. He knows too much. Their voices vanish down the corridor, but the venom lingers. You sit back, the candle's flame trembling as if it too heard the threat. Survival in this place is not only about pleasing the emperor, it is about outliving the daggers sharpened in silence. At dawn, the summons comes again. This time you are brought not to the emperor's hall, but to a pavilion near the lotus ponds. The air smells of damp reeds, and carp break the water's surface like secrets surfacing too late. The emperor waits. He is not dressed for ceremony. His robe is plain, his hair loosely tied. He looks less like a god, and more like a weary man hiding in his own garden. When he gestures for you to sit, It is not on the floor, but beside him on the stone bench. You have enemies, he says simply. You bow your head. Majesty, I am only a shadow. Who would bother to strike at me? He turns, eyes burning through you. Because shadows know where the light is brightest. They fear you because I notice you. The words cut sharper than a blade. For the first time you realize your survival is tethered not to your own silence, but to the Emperor's attention. And attention, in this palace, is both armor and curse. He leans closer. If you are to remain, you must learn this truth. Loyalty here is a costume. The only loyalty that survives is to power itself. Do you understand? Your mouth is dry. You nod, though every instinct screams that the ground beneath you is crumbling. That night, you dream of the lotus pond. The blossoms float serene on the red surface. Yet below the water, the stems tangle, strangling each other for space. You wake with the taste of mud in your throat, and the certainty that betrayal will come not with swords, but with whispers. The year turns. Winter dusts the palace roofs with white, muffling even the screams of prisoners dragged through its courtyards. Snow creeps into your bones, yet you no longer shiver. You have grown used to cold. One evening, the Emperor sends for you again. His chambers are dim, the brazier spitting sparks that fall like dying stars. He sits hunched over a scroll, his face carved deeper by time than you remember. When he looks up, his eyes hold not command, but fatigue. Do you know what they call me beyond these walls? He asks. You hesitate, then softly. They call you Heaven's Son, Majesty. He laughs, a hollow sound. No, they call me Tyrant, Madman, Ghost wearing a crown. He leans forward, his voice dropping. And what do they call you? You freeze. He knows. Of course he knows. Rumors ripple through the court like poisoned wine. Your name tied to secrets, to intimacy, to truths too sharp to survive. I do not ask because I doubt, he says. I ask because you must decide. Will you remain my mirror, or will you shatter? The silence is unbearable. You feel every beat of your heart as if it were striking stone. At last you whisper, Majesty, I am whatever you command me to be. For a long moment, he studies you. Then he nods, as if confirming something already written. You have lived long in a palace where others perished young, he says. But survival is not living. One day they will erase your name, even as they carve mine into stone. They will forget the man who carried my secrets, who spoke truths when silence was easier. But you, he pauses, you will know that you existed. That is all history will ever give you, the brazier hisses. Smoke curls into the air like the ghosts of every concubine who came before you. The Emperor lowers his gaze, returning to his scroll. Without another word, he dismisses you. You step out into the night. Snow falls heavier now, blanketing the courtyards, covering footprints as fast as they are made. Behind you, the palace glows faintly, a lantern in the storm. Ahead lies only darkness, and in that darkness, you understand. Your life has been a stage. Every whisper, every gesture, every silence was performance. The curtain is falling now, but no applause will follow. Only the hush of snow swallowing your name, leaving nothing but an unmarked trail disappearing into history's void. You breathe deep, the cold searing your lungs, and let the silence claim you.